This is the English Suite Podcast. I'm Sienna Bowers. On today's show, we feature an alumni spotlight on Jillian Benedict, class of 2014, who talks about the impact COVID-19 had on her writing life, the launch of an Instagram account to feature her short-form writing, the progress she is making during National Novel Writing Month, and her involvement in the local writing community. Jill also reads a sampling of her new work.
We are here with Jill Benedict. Welcome to the English Suite. When did you graduate?
I graduated in 2014. I was an English and creative writing double major, and I was very involved on campus. I think if it was anything remotely related to English or writing, I was there. I was the editor-in-chief of the Blue Root for, I think, a few years, and I was a reader on staff before then. And I was also a reader, and then I want to say managing editor for Widener Inc. as well. And even I was there when it switched from the Pioneer Review to Widener Inc. So
Were you there for that?
I was.
Cool.
Yes, I was there for the rebranding. There's that. And I was in the English club for a little bit as well. But yeah, so I kind of did anything and everything I could to be involved with my majors, and it has proven fruitful all these years later.
And what are you doing for work these days? Because I know a lot of current English and creative writing majors might be wondering, what am I going to do with this degree when I get out of college? Is there a future for me in the professional world?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, the one thing that I always liked about having those degrees was that it's a good general degree to have, first of all. And also, there is the implication that you can read and write well, which this might surprise people, but is not always the case. Not everyone knows how to read well and write well and put those ideas together and communicate them effectively, which, it's kind of self-explanatory with this degree. So currently, I am a proposal consultant for group insurance for a Fortune 100 company, so corporate America. But I'm using the skills I, cultivated when I was in school, doing the things I love to make a living now, and that's pretty great. And to fill that creative itch, I write on the side and I read a lot. So
that's great. And you've been at this company for a while now, haven't you?
Yeah, almost 4 years in March. So
Cool.
A long time. Yes.
But now currently, since the pandemic, you've been working at home.
Yeah, I've been working at home essentially when we shut down. So 2 years ago.
It's like a year and a half, 2 years. It all blurs
Yeah,
together.
I round up. But yeah, so I've been at home for a while.
And I think at some point after that all started, I checked in with you. I was kind of emailing some people just to say, how are you doing? And at some point I gathered that you were writing again. And
Yes.
And I think you were my sense of it was you were taking advantage of the at-home time to reboot your writing life. And ever since then, you've been really cooking with gas, as they say, right?
Yeah. So I took a little hiatus for a few years and got back to it during the pandemic because, as you said, I had the time to really sit with myself and try to make it a productive period of time for me. And I was curious as to whether writing was like riding a bicycle. And I'm like, well, let me just see if I still have it. And it is. You're a little rusty to start, but the foundation's still there, which was very exciting. But it just kind of out of a time where there felt like there was so little meaning in so many things, it really gave me a sense of direction and really helped ground me in a big way. So yeah, it's become one of the most important things in my life since then.
What kind of stuff have you been working on?
So I really like realistic fiction. But recently I've started to write realistic fiction, just sort of put a little, I don't want to say surreal, but an unconventional spin on things, I guess. So I'll just have a question in my mind and sort of figure out how I can apply that to a story that's still set in the real world, It's just a little bit different. And that's been fun and challenging for me. And I've also been writing a lot more about family stuff and sort of what we mean to one another as people. And that's been really interesting as well. I'm actually currently working on NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. So I'm trying to write 50,000 words in the month of November. And that novel I'm working on, I hesitate to say novel because it is, a woofer. It's rough, but but yeah, it deals with some of those things. So that's sort of where I'm at right now. And I guess in a way, I'm also trying to explore new styles and whatnot and things like that. Because I feel like since I started writing again, it feels a little bit like I started over, like I have a lot to learn. So, which I guess you never stop learning, but
it's true.
Yeah, so it's a fun time for me.
It's cool. So it sounds like you have a lot of time to play and experiment and try some new things out.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, how's the NaNoWriMo going? What are you keeping pace?
I am keeping pace. I hit 17,000 words today.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I sort of calculated ahead of time where like, 30 days, 50,000 words. How many words would I need in any given day? And it's like a little under 1,700. And because I'm a human person, I know there will be days where I don't write as much or don't want to. So instead, I just try to write 2,000 words Monday through Friday. And then whatever happens on the weekends, if I could write 1,000 words on Saturday and 1,000 words on Sunday, that would be ideal. Although like last Sunday, I didn't write at all. So, and I felt real guilty about it, but I'm still on pace.
Well, I'm also attempting NaNoWriMo this month. There's a novel I've been working on for, I don't even want to admit how many years. I've lost count of how it's just like the endless novel that just will not congeal for me, but I keep coming back to it. Right. And I'm nowhere near to your word count. I think I'm at 8,500, 9,000 words, somewhere in there.
That's still a good count.
I'm very happy with that. But I have written every day in November. And it seems to me like for some reason, like nighttime is a good time for me to like get around to my NaNoWriMo stuff. I don't know why, because I typically am more of a morning person with creative work. But if it works, it works. So I sort of settle down around 8, 9 o'clock and just kind of bang away for a while. But I find like I can't even get close to 2,000 a day. It's more like 800 to 1,000 is actually a good day for me. And then for some reason I peter out, but
I will say the 2,000 words a day is tough, and I do not sit down and write it all at one time. That's a big thing for me. And I try not, and I try not to stress about it. So a lot of times what I'll do is, so I'm a morning person as well. And I really tried to lean into it with Nano. So I wake up at like 5 a.m. But so what I'll do is I'll like wake up and I'll write, hopefully 500 words. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's a little more. And then I'll go to the gym and then I'll come back, shower, whatever, write a little bit more, make coffee, write a little bit more. So
good.
And it may not always be the best flow to get into. I mean, that being said, when I am on a roll, I just let it happen. But it does help make it more manageable for me, especially if I'm at like 1,300 words and I'm like, just do like 200 more words. You can get 200 in. And then you write 200 and you're like, you know what? That's like 2 paragraphs. That's not that bad. You can do a few more of these. So it's a lot of self-talk.
I'm doing all mine in like sort of one spurt, like per evening. But I did think like, well, if I chipped away at this in the morning, I would definitely boost my word count. But I'm not actually shooting for a word count with NaNoWriMo. It's more about kind of exploring a different point of view from one of the characters. I won't get into the whole thing. It's been pretty productive for me, and I do feel like I'm getting into, I guess, what they call a flow state. when I sit down to write, there's a little bit of inertia at first. It's like, oh, I have to do this again. Like, I want to take a day off. But once I start, it's just boom. It just kind of starts coming out. And there's something nice about NaNoWriMo that way. The few times I've attempted it, it kind of just pushes you forward. It just pushes you forward, and you just want to keep writing, and you don't look back. Right?
Yeah. No.
Don't look back, because that's like the kiss of death, because you'll see like all the garbage that you wrote.
Yeah.
Like that's for later. That's for December. Right.
Yeah.
But
it really is garbage.
November is just all about like finding the story and pushing forward and finding voice and just like kind of exploring it. And
yeah, exactly. If I can, and I struggle with first drafts to begin with. That is always the worst. I hate it. It takes me forever. And my only aim is to have a strong through line, because once you get the first draft done, you can do whatever you want with it. And that makes it so much less intimidating to me. Once it's down, that first draft, I'm like, oh, I can fix this. I have a lot of confidence in myself, I guess.
How much do you outline your fiction before you start a first draft?
So not much usually, which sometimes I'll mull it over for a while in my brain. And usually it's hit or miss. I have one story I'm working on that I had an idea and I started writing it, and it felt like the scope was so much bigger than I had expected. And I was just trying to finish it, and it is garbage. It is not good. And for the second draft, which I'm currently working on now, I realized like I just put in way too much stuff. Like it just does not need to be that complicated. And just in the first 6 pages I've parsed it down immensely. And in my brain, I just know like, okay, you don't need to go into this whole, like, you're not writing the next Game of Thrones. You don't need this much world building. You don't need all of this stuff. You can get away without it. But then I have other stories where it's really conducive to just mull it over. And then I sit and write it down. And even though it's not a great story, because it's a first draft, the through line's there and it's much more cohesive, and I feel much better about it. For NaNoWriMo, I did actual planning, although it's more of a rough outline because I want to have the space in the story built in to let it go where it needs to go, and not feel like I'm stuck or that I wrote myself into a corner because it's not going to this very specific place. But I also knew that I couldn't just let it happen totally organically, or I would have been so lost in the weeds. It's just too big of a project for that for me.
Yeah, I did a little bit of prep myself before NaNoWriMo, where I've attempted with this like endless novel. I've attempted many times scene outlines and things like that nature, and that's helped a little bit. But then like one outline leads to another outline, and it just proliferates. But one thing that seems to have helped recently is I made a spreadsheet where I've got like various characters, and I want to tell their stories, and I basically created a timeline for each character. So I had like kind of chronologies and like key dates going through the years, and then kind of plot points or just like events that happen in each character's life, because I can't keep it straight. Like people who have never attempted a novel, it's like the hardest thing ever, because
so
it's like you have to juggle all these balls in the air and remember everything. It's like it's very daunting.
Yeah, it is. And the first couple of days, like the first week, I was like, oh, this is fine. And now I'm getting into it further and into the different characters, and I'm like, this is a lot. I don't know how I feel about this. Why did I do this? Yeah, and it's tough. And I find like I forget things, like,
exactly
17,000 words in, and I'm like, wait, did I mention that thing? I'll just slap a note in here and hope that I come back to it. It's fine.
Yeah, it would help to have an admin. Like we need an admin to just kind of assist and keep records. and everything.
Yes.
So, but
Yeah.
this timeline is helping, because then I kind of like sort of refer back to it when I kind of, it gives me sort of a target to move forwards to. I don't know if that's what you mean by your through line. It may be the same thing.
Yeah, essentially that's, and it is just finding like the central core, bare bones story that's in there.
But in addition to this longer form fiction, you've been working in some very shorter forms. Do you want to talk about your Instagram venture?
Yeah, so I know a lot of writers have blogs, and I know you have your Substack subscription and just your newsletter. And, you know, so much of it is just trying to get our names out there, which is why we try to submit work and everything anyway. And I had a few people suggest that I write a blog. And I'm like, ugh. But the thing with the blog is that I'd feel like I'd have to make it substantial enough to make it fill the blog space. So like 1,000 words or something, which isn't much. But as we all know, when you're not feeling it, 1,000 words can feel like everything. It's so daunting. And so instead I'm like, well, maybe I'll just have a second Instagram and I'll essentially slap whatever I want on there. And, you know, I'm being a little flippant, but I'm sure you've had this happen where you start to have descriptions, like develop descriptions throughout the course of the day of a person or a thing, or you hear a little piece of dialogue. And these little, I think of them as little like doodles that I just have. And I'm like, well, I might return to these, but what if I don't? And I just have these little creative pieces, just in a folder somewhere? That seems wasteful. So when I was thinking about this Instagram, I'm like, oh, that's what I'll do. I'll just put these in there. So that's what I do. And it's all stuff that I like, and I don't want to say feel strongly about, because there are some that I think are stronger than others, but it's all stuff that I think is good enough that I can stand behind and put on my Instagram page. And it's kind of just for me. And if people like it, if people find me, that's great. And if they don't, that's fine. And it's been a fun little project. I enjoy doing it.
And it seems like you confine your posts to one Instagram photos. Like some people will do like multi-page posts, I guess right? But you is that intentional? Like usually, like it's got to fit on one Instagram photo.
Yeah, that is intentional. There have been a few longer ones where I knew it might fit a little bit better if it was on 2 pages. But I guess I think of it a lot like I had a journalism class in high school, and the teacher told me that in the first paragraph of any journal article, you want to have like who, what, where, when, why, and how, because readers will start to lose focus as you go down the article. And I feel the same way, I guess, about Instagram posts. Like as soon as you have to swipe over, you just slowly lose interest, even in creative work. So I try to put it all on one slide.
Even when people are posting vacation photos, you just kind of quickly swipe through those last 3 or 4, you know, like, okay, another mountaintop. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay. Yeah, it's by design. And also it's sort of a challenge for me to just keep things as small and neat as possible, because it is in a way its own creative form. So I know Dr. Kosh would definitely be one to testify to that.
That's right. Yeah, he's still teaching the flash fiction, and you know, he's like the evangelist for flash.
Yeah.
Do you have a few of these you'd like to share? Do you want to pick out a couple?
Yeah, sure. Okay. All right. So I have one from October 29th, because that's the best way to do some of these. Some of them have titles and some of them don't. My genetics had a lot to say in my development, as did my parents, who deferred to the powers that be to name me. If I had red hair like my mother, Valerie. Had my hair been dark like my father's, Erica. I was born at 1 p.m. with a few blonde sprouts, and thus another Jillian burst forth a sunbeam. It's a good name, albeit a little formal, and suits my personality. Still, it's hard not to wonder who I might be today if I had only been a shade different. Would I have been brave, happy? Would I have been easier to love? Some of them are dark too. Some of them, I'm like, this is just sad girl shit all the time.
That's okay. We need sad girl shit in the world.
Yeah.
It's important.
And in a way, I kind of think of it as like a little cyber diary too.
This one feels that way. It feels a little bit like a journal entry, but the last line, "Would I have been easier to love," is really the killer. Like that really kind of seals the deal.
Yeah. And then so sometimes when I'm not feeling particularly creative, I have those oblique strategies cards, as you know.
Shout out to Dave Blank at Padula Rasa for the oblique strategies. He was really happy to hear that you had gotten the set.
I love that. But yeah, so I'll pull a couple of them and rearrange words into like a little found poem. In my head, I'm like, oh, this is a short, quick thing to do. It's not quick. It takes me like half an hour, but that's okay. So this one is from October 13th, and I'll read it, and then I'll read the original cards.
This one came from an oblique strategy?
It did, yeah.
Okay.
Critical. Look at the most important ambiguities, less specifics, to remove more, tidy up, and often. Be the thing in things which you do most easily convert. Order is forgotten. And so the cards that I made that little poem out of are the following. Look at the order in which you do things. The most important thing is the thing most easily forgotten. Remove specifics and convert to ambiguities. Tidy up. Be less critical more often.
So you just mixed and matched all those cards into a found poem.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a fun one. Let's see.
By the way, were those oblique strategies cards, are they easy to find? Like if you want to buy them, like are they still in print, or did you have to buy them on eBay or something?
I had to buy them. I think I bought them through, I don't want to say it was Oblique Strategies website, but it was something very similar. Like, I don't know if it was, I definitely looked up just Oblique Strategies cards. It wasn't from eBay, and I had someone get them to me for me as a gift for Christmas. But I think it was like there's an Oblique Strategies, like generator that will just pull one for you online, and then they also sell the cards.
Got it.
I do not think they came from the United States, though. The currency was Great British Pound, so it took me forever to get here too. Okay. All right. And then I have one from the September 28th. This is just a fun little flash between two characters I developed. This one, too, I thought would be really quick and was not. I think someone is raising pigeons. There's a trio flip-flop flapping across the alley from one window to another. They weren't there when I moved in. They're just existing. Leave them alone. Rats with wings, Charlie says to herself. They're distractions. How can I work with their chaotic coos echoing through my living room? They're all trying to fuck the female. Sounds like quite the drama. Maybe they're polyamorous, I say, using my shoulder to hold the phone against my ear as I sort the mail. An envelope festooned with the Pennsylvania state seal catches my attention, no doubt containing a summons for jury duty. Balls. I mean, joy. It's the gift of performing my civic duty. I wouldn't put it past any creature, a culture of non-commitment. Now you're being dramatic. Just bitter. Charlie laments not for the first time today. Still, a shout of feeling goes through my arm. Pity for her and for me. You'll find your person. Maybe. She pauses, then speaks with a burst of energy. Maybe I'll find 2 people, or 3. Wouldn't that be something? Stranger things have happened, I say, but lose my words in a sudden thrash of wings.
Nice. That feels like we're sort of cutting into something like in media res. How did this one even sort of start for you?
So I have a slight obsession. The way my apartment is, there's like an alleyway cut in between two of our buildings, but only through half of the building. So like my bedroom and living room are bigger than my kitchen and bathroom. But there's a window leading out into an alleyway, and some of the siding on the next door building has lifted up and pigeons have made a home in there. And I just hear their cooing all the time, which I actually don't mind. It's very soothing. But when it first happened, I was obsessed with these pigeons and just seeing them flying across and across and across and figuring out what's happening. So I wrote a few pieces about that. And it's just my little obsession. Okay. And then the last one I'll read is from a while back. This is one of my favorites, and it's from June 9th. It's like the fourth one I've ever written. It's called Cherry. I think you would do well in a zombie apocalypse, Mom said to me one morning as we put away the groceries. You would turn off your humanity really fast. She was confident in her assessment and smiled when she handed me the bags of fresh produce. I think of it often when I'm in my kitchen cutting red foods, beets, tomatoes, cherries. Would I turn it off? Take a paring knife and slide it easily around a once human heart like I do a cherry. Take my thumbs to the flesh and dig out teeth and bone like I do the stony pit. Like it as much as I do when the thin, dark juice stains my fingertips, bleeds into my nail beds. Only time will tell.
What do you like about that one?
So my mom actually said that to me, that I would do well in the zombie apocalypse.
Is this a compliment or a backhanded compliment? Like, how are we supposed to construe this?
Yeah, it was very much a thank you moment. But no, so this one actually, I've had an image of someone cutting cherries with a paring knife in my brain forever, and I didn't know where to put it. I just think it's such a beautiful image between the color, and there's that threat of violence in there, even when it's not present. I just always kind of wanted to know what to do with it. And when I started writing these little things, I thought of that image and I'm like, well, how can I make something out of that? And then shortly thereafter, I remembered what my mom said. And I'm like, oh, there it is. Perfect.
It's great when you make those creative connections and you can stitch those threads and something new happens out of it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you've been, I'm sure you've been getting lots of good feedback from these Instagram stories, and you keep doing them. And what can we share your Instagram account if people want to follow?
Yeah, sure. It is Writer Without a Cause, because I have no idea what I'm doing with it, and I am just writing what I want, how I want, and when I can.
Beautiful. So you can follow Jill at that account, Writer Without a Cause, all one word. And you have some other news to report. Now, this was from earlier in the year, correct? You had a publication to celebrate.
Yes.
Can you able to tell us about that?
Yeah, I had my first actual short story published. Yay. I think many moons ago I had a poem published when I was fresh out of Widener, but yeah, this is my first piece of fiction. So this is very exciting. It's called Problem Visit, and there's a feminist sort of feel to it. It's very much a female-centered piece, which was interesting. It was the first time I've really started submitting work, A, but B, really having to dig into different literary journals and find one that I knew this would belong to, because you don't want to waste anyone's time. I don't want anyone wasting my time. So it took me a little while, but yes, it was published back in the summer in Feels Blind Literary, which publishes a lot of sort of women-centered work. Yeah. So I'm very happy that they liked it and that, it ended up there. It's a great little journal.
What's a quick thumbnail summary of the piece?
Essentially, this woman goes to a Planned Parenthood for a problem visit. She believes she has a UTI and she's sitting in the waiting room, and she sort of gets into this argument type conversation with this young woman across the way as they're waiting to be seen by the provider. And it's really about our perceptions of one another and ourselves, and how we project onto other people things that we feel about ourselves and judge them. And also it's a little bit about, in another way, like how it sounds so silly to say, but it's only taboo if you make it taboo. Women's issues are a thing for everyone. So
And I read this piece. You shared an
Mhm.
earlier draft of it,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, you did. Hmm.
I'm thrilled that you got it published.
Yeah, you and Dr. Kosh as well. You guys are my go-tos.
Happy to help. So congrats on that. We'll share a link to it in our show description so people can have a
Yeah.
read through.
Cool.
Now, in addition to, so it's really cool how you're kind of, you're doing the writing at home while you're working from
Mhm.
home. And then you're also doing the Instagram thing, which I think is a really great, valid avenue to pursue. And you're generating interest on that front. But then you're also doing stuff in the real world, not just the virtual world. So can you tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about what's happening with the literary scene in Philly? I know you've been involved in some community activities where I think that's been very helpful for you.
Yeah. So my local bookstore, A Novel Idea on Passyunk, does a lot of events and readings and things like that. They did do a big, we did community drafts for a while. I think they're still going on. I haven't been to the last couple just because of scheduling conflicts, which is hilarious because I'm home most of the time. But yeah, the literary scene in Philly is really starting to open up. They tried really hard to maintain a scene during COVID, virtually and whatnot. But now that things are outside more, people are getting together more, and it seems to be really conducive and really lively. I know there was a reading recently right at the Singing Fountain because one of the owners of A Novel Idea on Passyunk had a new book published, which is great for her, called Creole Conjure, Christina Rosso, Creole Conjure. But yeah, they had a nice book signing and things like that. So yeah, I as I said, I haven't been able to go to the few community drafts, but I do really try to be involved in whichever way I can, any way I can, when I can, because writing is a solitary activity when you're doing it, but that doesn't mean that you go through it alone, and community is so important. And having gone back into it after a couple of years, I've had to sort of reestablish my network of people. And that's why I've attended a lot of the Widener's events as well, virtually. So I know there was the open mic for Homecoming. I was at that, and there have been a few events over the semester I've been to. Yeah, and really just trying to find my creative people.
And has that worked out well? Like, have you met people and kind of forged some new friendships that way?
Yeah, I really have. And then I did take my big COVID purchase was I went to a writing workshop in North Carolina in October.
Oh, wow. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So it was Wild Awakenings was what it was called. And it was in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and Cheryl Strayed, who wrote Wild, was actually like the keynote. Her and Rhoda Ahmed, who writes children's books, and she wrote a best-selling novel in Norway. So it was the two of them as the speakers, and it was like 350 women. There's a lot of estrogen. Yeah, so we spent the weekend in the mountains, writing a whole bunch, sharing with different experiences, and I've met some really cool people, and we managed to keep in touch, and we actually have exchanged some work since then as well. So really trying to figure out who, are good readers for my work, who has the time, who's willing. And likewise, I enjoy reading other people's work and helping people to develop their craft as well. So really trying to establish those relationships with people has been a priority of mine recently.
It really is a two-way, three-way, four-way street, isn't it? It's like kind of like writing is obviously what we're very interested in pursuing, but you have to read a lot to be a good writer, and then you read other people's work and give them feedback, and then seek feedback from others for your work, and one hand washes the other. and then like attend people's book signings and events, and like just get involved. Like that's I think often students don't see that fuller picture because of the way, the way education happens and whatever.
Yeah.
But once you get out into the real world, that's how the game is played. And it's really important.
Oh, yeah.
It's really important. And it's a lot more fun, like you said, because it's a solitary craft, and you kind of go out of your mind if you're just in a room writing all the time.
Oh, yeah. And you never really progress either if you're only ever around your own work. And I mean, it is a lot of fun, but I don't think people are always aware that it requires a lot of energy. If you want to be a writer, you really have to want to be a writer, and you have to do the things that come with it.
Right. Exactly. And a lot of this happens outside the context of education. That's important to point out too. Like there's so many writers who are not like in the orbit of MFA programs or PhD programs or undergraduate programs or any of that. Like, and I'm sure you're coming across those people in Philadelphia all the time.
Oh, yeah. And it's really refreshing because I don't know if you remember, but I actually started an MFA program and I left. It just wasn't for me. And I was I had some personal things going on at the time, but trying to write and establish my network outside of that, while it's challenging because you don't have the network sort of built in, it also feels more organic, and I'm going to say it. It feels a little bit more pure because the people involved really want to do it and really want to help you. And that's really nice. And it's exciting, and it is really inspiring to meet those kinds of people that just do it because they love it and they're just figuring it out the same as you.
I don't know if you knew this, Jill, but you attended AWP, the Associated Writers and Writing Professors Conference. I don't know how many you went to. How many did you go to?
3.
You were in the one in Boston. We all went up for that one.
Boston, Chicago, Seattle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And wow, you got your money's worth. That's great. Did you know the next AWP in the spring is in Philadelphia?
Oh, I do, and I plan on going.
Awesome.
It's in the city I live in. I can't.
You gotta go. You'll walk. You can walk to it probably.
I could.
Yeah. Well, I'll look forward to seeing you at AWP. We'll have I think a big slate of students along with us.
Yeah.
And we hope to check back in with you again soon and have you share more writing and celebrate some more publications. Thanks for being on the English Suite.
Thanks for having me.
You can follow Jill Benedict on Instagram at Writer Without a Cause. Jill recently published short story Problem Visit is online at feelsblindliterary.com. The English Suite is produced by Jim Esch and a staff of dedicated students at Widener University. Shapressa Yimraj, Sienna Bowers, Gabby Norris, Chloe B. Flamery, and Courtney Farina. You can find our podcast at anchor.fm, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcast directories. We would love to hear your feedback, announcements, and suggestions. Send an email to widenerenglishsuite@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.